It's 1:04 in the morning, and my phone lights up the ceiling like a warning flare. One name, one I hadn't seen in 2 years. Not the one I expected to haunt me at that hour. Not Danielle, my ex, but her younger sister, Priya. The text said exactly 6 words. Come over. Don't bring questions. I want to tell you I laughed it off, rolled over, went back to sleep like a reasonable adult with boundaries and self-respect. I didn't. I was standing in my kitchen in mismatched socks before I even decided to move, keys already in my hand, like my body had made the decision before my brain got a vote. My name's Nathan Cole. I'm 34. I fix expensive espresso machines for a living, which sounds like a joke until you find out how much people will pay to avoid a bad flat white. And 2 years ago, I was supposed to marry Danielle Ruiz. Supposed to. Emphasis doing a lot of work in that sentence. Priya was the built-in extra, the loud, sharp-tongued little sister who used to steal my hoodies and roast my music taste at every family dinner. She was 26 back then, studying to be a nurse, always the one diffusing arguments before they became wars. When Danielle and I ended, Priya didn't take sides. She just went quiet, disappeared from my life the way people do when the bridge between you burns down with someone else standing on it. So when her name lit up my phone that night, every version of why ran through my head at once. Is Danielle hurt? Is Priya hurt? Did someone die? Is this a drunk text sent to the wrong person? I typed back, is everything okay? The reply came fast. Just come, please. That please did something to me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a cry for help with exclamation points. It was quiet and tired, like someone who'd already decided not to explain herself and needed me to be okay with that. I was in the car in 4 minutes. Here's the thing about 1 a.m. drives across a sleeping city. They strip you down to whatever you're actually feeling, because there's nothing else to distract you. No traffic to curse at, no radio host to argue with, just streetlights doing their slow strobe over the dashboard, and my own heartbeat doing something embarrassing. I hadn't seen Priya in 2 years, and somewhere between my apartment and her building, I realized I hadn't stopped thinking about her either. Not in the way you think about an ex, in the way you think about someone who used to make your worst days funnier just by existing in the room. Her building had one of those buzzer systems that never work properly. I stood in the cold, trying 3 different times before a voice, hers, crackled through. 4th floor, she said. No hello, no explanation. Just the door unlocking with a groan. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, which is a stupid move in December, and by the time I reached her door I was out of breath in a way that had nothing to do with the stairs. She opened it before I could knock. Priya Ruiz, standing in an oversized university sweatshirt, hair pulled up messy, eyes red-rimmed but dry, like she'd already done the crying part and moved into whatever comes after. You came, she said, and it wasn't a question, but it sounded like relief anyway. You said don't bring questions, I said. I brought like 400, but I left them in the car. The corner of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close enough that some tight knot in my chest loosened a fraction. Come in before my neighbor calls the cops on us for suspicious hallway loitering. Her apartment smelled like burnt candle wax and cold coffee. There were textbooks stacked on the counter, a half-eaten bowl of cereal on the coffee table, and a blanket balled up on the couch like she'd been camping out there for hours, maybe days. Sit, she said. I'll explain. Sort of. Sort of? I said no questions. I didn't say no context. She dropped onto the couch, pulling her knees up to her chest, and for a second, she looked exactly like the 26-year-old who used to fall asleep on our couch during movie nights, except older now, tireder, carrying something new. My dad had a heart attack 3 days ago, she said. I felt the floor tilt slightly. Priya, he's stable, he's okay, recovering. That's not actually the part I called you about. She rubbed her face with both hands. But it's the reason I've been at the hospital every day, running on granola bars and vending machine coffee, and tonight my mom finally made me come home to sleep, and the second I walked in here, alone, in this apartment, it just... She stopped, swallowed. It hit me how long it's been since I let anyone take care of me instead of the other way around. I sat down slowly, careful with the distance between us, the way you handle something fragile that might not want to be handled at all. Why me? I asked, before I could stop myself, immediately breaking my own promise about the questions. She looked at me for a long moment. Because you're the only person who ever showed up for this family without needing anything back, even after everything with Danielle, even after 2 years of not talking. Her voice cracked slightly on the last part. I didn't know who else I trusted enough to just be a mess in front of. I didn't say anything right away, because there wasn't a version of "I've missed you too" that wouldn't have sounded insane at 1:30 in the morning in this context. So instead, I said the only true thing I had. I'm glad you called. We sat there a while, not talking about anything important. She told me about the hospital cafeteria's surprisingly good soup. I told her about a client who tried to fix his own espresso machine with duct tape and a prayer. Small things, safe things. The kind of conversation two people have when they're both circling something bigger, and neither wants to be the one who says it first. At some point she got up to make tea, and I followed her into the kitchen because sitting alone on that couch suddenly felt like too much silence. She moved around the small space on autopilot, reaching for mugs without looking, the way you do in a home you've lived in long enough that your hands know it better than your eyes. You still take it black with too much sugar? She asked, not turning around. I blinked. You remember that? I remember a lot of things I pretended not to. She set 2 mugs down, finally facing me. That's kind of the problem, Nathan. I didn't push. I let the kettle fill the silence instead, that low rising hum before the click. When she handed me the mug, our fingers brushed, and neither of us made a big deal out of it, which somehow made it feel like a bigger deal than if we had. We ended up back on the couch, closer than before, though I couldn't have told you exactly when the distance closed. She told me about nursing school, about the 12-hour shifts that left her hands smelling like antiseptic no matter how much she washed them, about the first patient she lost and how nobody warns you that grief has a smell too, floor cleaner and flowers gone slightly too sweet. I think that's part of why the hospital this week wrecked me, she admitted. It wasn't just fear for my dad. It was every other version of that fear I've swallowed for 3 years on the job, all showing up at once, uninvited. You don't have to be the strong one every time, I said. Tell that to my family. I've been the strong one since I was 14. I'm not your family tonight, I said. I'm just a guy who fixes espresso machines and apparently still remembers how you take your tea. That got the first real, unguarded smile out of her all night, the kind that reached her eyes and softened the exhaustion sitting there. Eventually she said, "Can I tell you the actual reason I panicked and texted you instead of literally anyone else?" You don't have to. I know. I want to. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. When the doctor came out after my dad's surgery and said the word stable, the first person I wanted to call wasn't my mom, who was standing right next to me. It wasn't my friends. It was you. And that scared me, because you're not supposed to be my person. You were supposed to be my sister's person. The word "were" did something complicated in my chest. Danielle and I ended 2 years ago, I said carefully. That version of me, the one who was supposed to be family through her, that's not really what's happening here. Then what is happening here? Priya asked, and there was something brave in the question, the way she looked directly at me instead of at her hands, at the floor, at literally anywhere safer. I thought about lying, thought about saying something easy, something that would let us both pretend this was just an old friend showing up for an emergency. But she'd asked me not to bring questions, and I figured that meant she wanted honesty in exchange. I think, I said slowly, you've been the person I compare quiet, easy conversations to for 2 years, and I never let myself think too hard about why. Priya went very still. That's a loaded thing to say to your ex's sister at 2 in the morning, she said, but her voice had lost its edge. You started it with the text. I started it because my dad almost died and I needed a friend. And now? She looked at me for a long time before answering. Now I'm wondering if friend was ever the honest word. Here's where I could tell you it turned into some cinematic moment, the kind with swelling music and rain on the windows. It didn't. It was quieter than that. She reached over and took my hand, just held it, like she needed proof that something steady existed in a week that had otherwise fallen apart. I let her. Neither of us moved closer. Neither of us needed to, not yet. I should go, I said eventually, glancing at the clock. 2:47 a.m. You need sleep, real sleep. Will you check on me tomorrow? She asked. Not because of the text at 1 a.m. crisis thing, just because. I was always going to, I said, even before tonight, if I'm honest. She almost smiled. That's a very big confession for a man who claims he left his questions in the car. I lied. I brought one question. What is it? Can I come back tomorrow with actual food, not vending machine soup? Priya laughed. A real one this time, tired but genuine, the kind of laugh that cracks something open in a room that had been holding its breath all night. Yeah, she said, come back. I stood, and she walked me to the door, arms crossed against the early morning chill leaking in from the hallway. For a second, we just stood there, the kind of pause that used to make me nervous back when I was 25 and bad at goodbyes. It didn't feel like that now. It felt like something settling into place instead of something about to fall apart. Text me when you get home, she said, so I know you didn't fall asleep at a red light like a menace. I make no promises about the menace part. Nathan, I'll text you, I said, and I meant it the way you mean things you've already decided are going to matter for a long time. The drive home was slower than the drive there. No adrenaline pushing my foot down, just the quiet hum of empty streets and a version of my own thoughts I hadn't let myself have in 2 years. I kept replaying the way she'd said my name, like it belonged to someone she'd chosen instead of someone she'd inherited through her sister. The next morning, I showed up with actual food, soup from a real restaurant, the kind with lids that don't threaten to pop off in the car, and Priya opened the door already dressed for the hospital, hair damp, eyes less hollow than the night before. You actually came, she said, like she still hadn't fully believed I would. I told you I would. People tell me a lot of things at 3 a.m. that don't survive daylight. I'm not most people, I said, and she studied me for a second like she was deciding whether to believe it. We drove to the hospital together. Her dad, Manny, was sitting up in bed when we walked in, tubes and monitors doing their quiet beeping work around him, and the first thing he said when he saw me was, "Well, this is a surprise I did not see coming while unconscious. Good to see you too, Manny." Is this a therapy visit, or is my daughter finally bringing home someone decent? Dad, Priya said, mortified, but she was smiling. Manny looked between the two of us, taking his time, the way fathers do when they're piecing together a story nobody's told them yet. You two didn't drive separately, he said, not a question. We carpooled, Priya said quickly. Manny said, unconvinced, glancing at me with something that looked suspiciously like approval. Well, took you both long enough. Neither of us corrected him. I want to tell you the story ends there, clean and easy. But real life doesn't hand you a bow like that. Her dad's recovery took weeks. Good days mixed with setbacks. Physical therapy sessions Priya insisted on attending even when her own shifts left her running on fumes. Danielle found out I'd been visiting Priya and had opinions about it. Loud ones at first, texts full of question marks and old grievances dressed up as concern. Then quieter ones once she realized her sister was happier than she'd been in years, and that happiness wasn't something either of them owed an explanation for. Priya and I didn't rush anything. We didn't need to. We'd already skipped past the part where two people pretend not to know what they feel. That part burned off somewhere between a 1 a.m. text and a stairwell climb 2 steps at a time. What I learned from that night is something I don't think you fully understand until it happens to you. Sometimes the person who shows up isn't the one the story was supposed to be about. Sometimes it's the one standing quietly in the background the whole time, the one who never asked for anything, the one who finally sends 6 words at an hour when nobody's guard is up enough to overthink the answer. Come over. Don't bring questions. I didn't bring questions that night. I brought myself. And somewhere between the burnt candle wax and the cold cereal and the hand that reached for mine on a couch at 3 a.m, I think that turned out to be exactly what she needed. Months later, when things between us had settled into something steady and unhurried, I asked her the one question I'd never let myself ask that first night. Why 6 words? Why not just call me? She thought about it for a moment, the way she thinks about most things, carefully, like she's checking the answer against something true before she lets herself say it out loud. Because if I called, you would have asked why, and I would have had to explain something I hadn't figured out how to explain yet, she said. A text let me be honest without being ready. It let me ask for you without admitting how long I'd wanted to. I understood that more than I let on. Some of the most important nights of your life don't announce themselves with certainty. They arrive small, almost accidental. A buzzing phone at an hour when you're too tired to overthink. A decision made by your body before your mind catches up. A stairwell climbed 2 steps at a time towards someone you didn't know yet you'd been waiting for. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't asking why. It's just showing up.